Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today, the Big Ten just changed everything for college football and debatably just ended it in a big way. Washington and Oregon are joining the Big Ten alongside, of course, the already announced USC and UCLA next season. So there is a lot to talk about today. Everything is changing for college football. The Big Ten now has 18 teams, and I think we're going to end up at 20. We're going to be talking about that today as well. And of course, how this impacts college football as a whole, the Big Ten, the SEC, and of course, we got to talk a little bit about Nebraska as well. So we have a lot to talk about. Caleb, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. This is crazy, though. I mean,
dude,
with the two additions of teams, the Big Ten schedules that we've had for the next couple of years, you got to scrap them. Start fresh, start over. So those, again, it's madness. And again, there's so many teams. The Pac-12 is scrambling. And yeah, this just
the Big 12, ACC, everyone is scrambling.
This changes college football forever. And essentially, college football has always been a place of have and have-nots, but the disparity is growing.
It is truly the time of have and have-nots, yeah.
Yeah, there is, you are either in two conferences at this point, or you might never see the college football playoff. You might not see TV time at this point, with how everything is going. It's just crazy. At this point, as a Nebraska fan, I'm happy to be placed into the Big Ten, or as SEC fans, you feel okay there because it's really just these two conferences at this point. And they're just keep grabbing assets, picking and choosing from the different conferences, and it seems like we're forming just two super leagues for one. It feels like this is how the NFL was formed. It feels like an AFC and an NFC. Two separate leagues. It's crazy.
So I think that's what we have to start here is the beginning of the future. It's really the beginning of the future for college football. So let's start there. What are your thoughts on the rest of the conferences? Where we head from here? Obviously everyone agrees that we're going to end up with at least two super conferences with the Big Ten and the SEC, but where do the chips fall? How does this play out? Like in the long term, you're looking 5-10 years down the road. What does this mean for the rest of the schools, the rest of the conferences, and the future of college football?
Yeah, again, for the Pac-12, the MAC, I know the Big 12 has added some teams and done some stuff. I'm still even concerned about them at this point. The ACC is held strong thus far, but I still think that the SEC is going to cherry pick the likes of Clemson, the likes of Florida State. I don't think they stay, in the ACC. And again, I think those teams, those smaller schools, we could see losses of football programs. They could move down divisions at this point. I don't see a world where, again, this 30 college football teams, I just don't see a world where that is the same anymore for Division I.
There's so many things we can talk about here. There's a huge trickling down effect here, obviously compounded with the transfer rules and how quickly players can leave these smaller programs and go up the ladder. If you're a small school in the MAC, it is going to be so difficult to keep a competitive roster at any point, because any player that stands out and finds its way up the ladder is going to aim to go to the Big Ten or the SEC every single time. Yeah. And not only that, but more than likely, we're going to see a decrease in how many non-conference games these teams play over time. And that's the biggest source of income for some of these small teams, is playing 2 or 3 games where they get absolutely slaughtered by Alabama or Georgia.
That funds their program.
It literally funds their program. I went to school in Bowling Green, and so I went to the Bowling Green versus Tennessee game. And let me tell you, that was financially very important for Bowling Green's athletic department. Go and get slaughtered. That is how these mid-major schools fund their programs. And, that's going to be massively at risk in the future now, because the bigger schools are going to be looking for big contract TV deals to play the good big teams early on in the year. So from a TV perspective, who wants to see Arkansas play against Tennessee Tech when you can watch, Oregon play against Alabama in week 1, or Oregon play against, Michigan
and that's
in week 1 or week 2.
And again, with these super conferences and the expansion of the college football playoff, perfection is now just decreased. It doesn't matter as much as it did before. Exactly. Now, it used to be you had to go, 12-0, 11-1 to get into these, to get into your championship game, to have a chance to get a bid into one of these bowl games. But as we've gone away with that, and even in the college football playoff, again, there's still teams that have run the gambit, been perfect. But once you expand this to 12 teams, again, how many losses? It takes the pressure off. Exactly. If you play, all 12 games inside conference, and that could very well happen, or it's only 2 crossover games, maybe you fund one old rival that you had, or maybe you were crossing over. I mean, I think eventually down the line, as we look in this grand scope, the SEC and the Big 12 and the Big 10, why cannibalize each other when you two are the top dogs? You just make a deal with one another. You monopolize, you block everyone else out, and it's just these 2 leagues. I mean, that is so much more likely than anything else at this point. And so, I mean, I think when that happens,
it is wild. If you, like you said earlier, if you end up, at this point, the Big 10 has more teams than the AFC or the NFC in the NFL. This the way it's going is it's literally just going to be another NFL. And again, luckily we landed in one of the conferences. Luckily, Tom Osborne had the foresight once Texas made the move with the Texas network, and he's like, heck no, we deserve all of our money. That was the difference. And, Texas has jumped ship again, Oklahoma, again, all these things, even Penn State all the way back in 1990, like all these different moves, war for money. Again, you have to, think about the finances as the university, as that program. And again, now we're at this point where, again, we're secure. The SEC secure. I just see a world in 10, 15 years where it's just those 2 conferences. We're each on one half. We play a couple crossover games, and that's all college football is. And, I still think that, those other schools will have it, but it's not going to be, I don't even think it's going to be the same division. Like, to be honest, I don't think those people. You're talking like 15 or 20 years down the line.
I don't think the Big 12 has a chance to get in the college football playoff in 15, 20 years. And I think that's just the way it's going to be. Maybe
I don't know.
Right now there could be moves. The Big 12 could snag some other teams. Maybe they could be the 3rd super conference. We can talk about the Big
20
3.
years is a long time. At this point, I'm not even guaranteed that college football survives 20 years, let alone the conferences. We talked about this before.
The NCAA I think there's a world in general.
Right. The NCAA is really what the problem is here. At the end of the day, the biggest threat is probably that schools end up diverging, at least football programs diverge away from student athletes, and end up being more of just like an independent football league that uses the likeness of universities to play college football. That they would actually be league spots with owners, and it would operate like an NFL or a subdivision of the NFL using the college likenesses. And they'd have a deal with the colleges that would allow for revenue to run through and all these things. Of course, they wouldn't be losing out on the big TV deals. But at this point, I'm not guaranteed that student athletes stick around for that much longer, considering the changes that college football's already gone through.
Yeah, we see it again in basketball too, again with the G League and everything, where players can just get money. And again, in Europe, you can just go to Europe and, some of the best stars, Luka, Wembanyama, even, LaMelo Ball went to another league to do it. And you even see the Jonathan Kumingas and some of those other guys who, again, came from different countries. It's like, I'll just join the G League. I'll get paid a good amount of money. And, honestly, I'll play better competition than college basketball.
Right. We haven't even talked about how this affects other sports.
Yeah, that's a whole
devastating for other sports.
Exactly.
Good luck, USC softball. Go play Rutgers on a Tuesday. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, again,
that is devastating.
We have a athlete, where we have a plane, but I don't know if Rutgers or do they have a private jet? I don't even know.
For softball teams?
For softball, heck no.
No. So how? There's no way.
It's a 3-day bus trip.
You're gonna take the plane. You're gonna fly commercial, and that's gonna be just a terrible trip. Yeah, for a softball game on a Tuesday, and you're going to miss class.
2 layovers.
Layovers, whatever it is. It's not an ideal situation. And so for these smaller, the Olympic sports or the other smaller sports on campuses, this is a tough situation.
They're
and
gonna
that's
play
a whole
doubleheaders, right? You're gonna have to.
I mean, I don't know what you do. That's gonna be a terrible situation. Those road trips are gonna be absolutely brutal. Long story short, inside the football sphere, I mean, it's massive. It really is, and it spurs all the dominoes. And so when it comes to the Big Ten specifically, I mean, who do you foresee if you had to put your money down on, let's say 2 more teams joining the Big Ten, which teams would you put your money on? Right now, ESPN reported that there's interest in North Carolina and Virginia from the Big Ten, but do you see those being the 2, or do you see other ones potentially?
That blows my mind. Now that'd be the South as well. I mean, we have Midwest teams, we have East Coast teams, we have West Coast teams, and then North Carolina, Duke, that'd be, Southern teams. I mean, that's a global affair at this point. There's no rhyme or reason. I mean, it already wasn't when at least we have a little pocket.
Rutgers.
Yeah, at least we have a little pocket. And at least, like Penn State's like, not too crazy far from Rutgers, but like, that's crazy. I mean, we'll literally just cover the United States. I thought maybe like a Kansas, because of their basketball prowess, could maybe leave. Stanford was a thought, but, just reports from that haven't seen that Stanford's super interested.
That logically makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You maintain the rivalries and all of that, but
some feel that they can stay independent. And so, I mean, that's another thing. Again, Notre Dame has always been, I think, a wish list item for the Big Ten.
Notre Dame's kind of like it's like the dream. It's the fruit that's never been picked.
Yes.
It's the ripe fruit that's looking delicious on the tree. I mean, I don't know. Notre Dame is an interesting one. I mean, if I had to guess, I think at some point Notre Dame will cave and probably join.
At least maybe like just in football, or I don't know. They'll work out special deals.
Like you said, from basketball's perspective, Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, those types of teams, that'd be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, what a really crazy league that would be. I mean, who knows what this shakes out? How many teams even the goal is? Maybe it is just like, it's a land grab where we get 25 teams in the Big Ten.
Dude, this feels like the Cold War. It feels like an arms race.
It is. It is 100% an arms race, but for TV contracts between the SEC and the Big Ten. And you got, good old the Big 12 over there. I mean, they came up from out of the grave by pulling the Colorado move. Like, it's wild. Yeah,
Arizona and Arizona State joined the Big 12.
Exactly. Like, you just thought it was like
the Pac-12 is dead.
Yeah. Pac-12 is RIP. It's crazy. Like, you thought Cal was going to go and then they weren't sure. And, I bet some of those guys, they feel very silly because the Pac-12 is just disintegrated in front of them. It's also funny that the Big Ten, originally we made a deal with like, hey, we're going to team up against the SEC, and then we just snipe their best teams and all of their money. Like, it's crazy. The power plays and move, the business decisions that have been involved with this. I never could have foreseen college football going in this direction the way it has.
Fast.
I mean, just college sports in general. It's just wild. It's a whole new frontier, and who knew, like, NIL was the domino to just, like, it feels like just change.
Yeah, there were just a bunch of little dominoes that basically chain reaction to everything, really. Yeah. It truly is incredible. So I think that's where we really kind of get more narrow now, and you can talk about how this affects, the Big Ten Conference, and just you can talk about Nebraska specifically here. I mean, right now when it comes to the schedule for the Big Ten, it's still up in the air exactly how it's going to work or how the Big Ten is going to navigate the schedule, potentially the conference alignment, potentially divisions or what that could look like. The rumor is right now that they're actually just going to keep similar strategies to what they were doing before with this Flex Protect Plus plan that they had with protecting the rivalries and then adding in the rotation of the new teams into the schedule. So that is a possibility at this point. I mean, what do you expect? What would be your dream scenario, first of all, for the Big Ten's alignment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fun to play those West Coast teams as we're so close. I mean, it makes sense that we always keep the Iowa game. Again, having some sort of close, map vicinity, like a local rivalry is kind of fun, even though, we're not even that close in comparison to, the Big 12, where we're a lot closer to the other teams.
Right.
But that makes a lot of sense, but man, it'd be, again, I'm just so excited to play all of these teams all the time. I mean, for me, it's like I would happily trade away a Northern Illinois game to play USC. Like that's a no-brainer for
Agreed.
me. I know it's like we could lose the game, but it's just not going to matter as much. It's not going to matter as much anymore. I think like there could be a world.
I mean, the whole
where,
bowl
like,
game system is probably in jeopardy.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably mostly done. Those bowl games.
I mean, like think about it, because like if let's say the Big Ten goes to a 10 or 11 eventually conference game schedule, like which is possible down the road here in the next
10 would
few
make
years.
sense, I guess.
10 makes a lot of sense
because
like suddenly
you're trying to play as many teams in your conference as you can.
Like, are you really gonna have a Big Ten team that went 6-6 because they played 10 Big Ten teams play against Conference USA team that went 6-6?
No, and again, with however many the super conference gets, I mean, it only makes sense that the playoff will eventually expand. I don't know how far, but 12 is definitely not going to be enough when, again, you have this super conference with, again, close records. So with that being the case, you think of wild card games. Yeah, I mean, it's all going to be for one championship. And I think, again, as a Nebraska, or just any team in the Big Ten, it's exciting for you because your chance at a national championship goes way up. Because here now with the bracket system, you could have 3, 4, I don't know, like depending on your schedule, you could, and how big this bracket goes just in the future, you could be like 7-5 and roll in, get the last wild card spot and be a salty team where you have a chance.
See, for me, I just don't know. Like I in my ideal world, I hope it sticks still, like where the postseason is pretty exclusive. I'm already a little uncomfortable with 12 teams.
I'm not at all. I think it's so good. I hope it gets to 16.
I'd rather probably have 8.
I think again, when this monopolizes and it's again the foci is just on these like 40 teams or whatever this ends up being, I think the talent is just going to be. It's going to be hard to separate themselves where I think you're going to want more play. The more playoff spots make more sense. I think in this landscape of college football where there's 130 some teams, I get your argument. But as we get to where there's really just 40 great, really good teams, I think.
No. I think it's the opposite. 16 makes more sense with a lot of teams. With less relevant teams, you should have less playoff spots. Like now, like 12 playoff spots made more sense 10 years ago. Like in a world where let's say there's 20 Big Ten teams and there's 20 SEC teams. So you have the top 40 best programs in theory, including Rutgers. Like at the end of the day, I don't want to see 12 of those teams make it. Like I want to see.
You do, and you put them against, and you pit them against the other conferences. It'd be so fun.
And then the bowl games are the rest. Then you have to play one bowl game, and it's against an SEC team. So if we finished 8th in the conference, then
that'd
you
be fun.
Play against the 8th team. That's your bowl game.
I mean, I'm in for that. I think that's a ton of fun.
Which is maybe what bowl games will just be.
Yeah, the 25th teams play each other. That'll be great. Foster Farms Bowl, baby.
Exactly.
The Idaho Potato Bowl lives on in
Amen.
The 25th team versus the 25th team. It'll be better competition. And again, to have every game really matter, like in the NFL, again, where all 12 of these games are super important in the regular season is going to be so much fun. Like again, to have 2 games, crossover games where you're playing the SEC and then 10 games, all Big Ten, every team is really solid. Every game is really important, versus the,
for sure.
David
again,
Glass
for me,
stories are fun, but I mean, I don't know.
The problem for me right now is that you just have like, honestly, at this point, then I would rather just get rid of conference championships and then just make them playoff games, which essentially they already are.
Yes. They are at this point. And so, yeah.
Because like, to me, it's like, what, like imagine if the NFL did that. Like you had like a conference championship for the AFC and then you had the playoffs.
No,
it would make no sense.
That's true. It doesn't and it'll probably go that way. We'll probably just, again, add a playoff game, delete the championships, and it'll just be.
So would you rather have a Big Ten playoffs and an SEC playoffs and it's literally set up like the NFL?
Yeah,
and then the championship is.
Would you rather
the Super Bowl?
I mean, essentially, would you rather? I don't know if I'd rather mix them up or not, or like have them.
seeded by ranking of whatever the top 25 is, right?
Or maybe it would be better just to be within the conference, just to have no bias and no craziness. Maybe that's just
but although then you play teams twice, and I don't love the idea of playing teams twice in college. So
yeah, it's not as fun.
The positive argument for your side is that the 4-team college football playoff has incentivized powerhouses. That's an argument that's pretty common now. Is that why would a recruit who would take a chance on a smaller school when really the only 4 teams have a chance to make the playoff anyway? So, hopefully over time, as more teams can make the playoff, that would allow for more players to be willing to take more risk based off of places they actually want to go and all of these things. And so it might help balance the power in recruiting as well, which would be really interesting. So yeah, I think that's fascinating. So when it comes to Nebraska specifically here, how do you feel like this affects Nebraska, its potential, recruiting, everything else in between, scheduling, odds of being a champion, odds of success, all of those factors? How is your instant reaction?
I mean, I think recruiting is just as hard, maybe a smidge easier, but I think I don't know. I feel like that's kind of a wash.
That's fascinating.
But I do think that it does make the chances of a championship easier for us. And I do think that, I foresee Nebraska hosting a college playoff game.
That would be epic.
To think of that in the future,
could you imagine?
That in Memorial Stadium to have a college playoff game, the state will be abuzz like never seen before.
On the recruiting side, I think that's where the argument is the most interesting, because obviously Nebraska's in a really interesting spot when it comes to being in the center of the country, and the travel, and something that Matt Rhule even mentioned in the press conference was like, he likes the idea that we're in the center of this conference, that now we literally are the connecting state to the West and the East, that we have the shortest flights. We only travel one time zone. So those are advantages inside the game and inside the season itself.
For sure.
But also when it comes to recruiting, we're still the only team that the South has access to. Like Texas, we're the closest team. Oklahoma, Kansas City. If those players want in the Big Ten, we're the access point. And Matt Rhule, coming from Baylor, has the connections in Texas. So for me, this is only a positive when it comes to players wanting to play in the best conference. And we have the chance to take over Texas as a recruiting hub in the future. And I think that's really where we should be focusing our time and doubling down on our strengths and getting back to our Texas pipelines of the Big 12 and developing those relationships and finding those connections there, because the potential is there. The talent is there. And Definitely. We've seen success in the past recruiting in Texas. So for me, that's where it gets really exciting, where of the potential of a Texas pipeline coming back.
Well, and that is the other good thing is literally wherever you're from in the country, your parents are probably going to be able to come to a game. Like if you're from California,
exactly.
Guess what? You can come to the USC game or, the UCLA game or the Oregon game. Like it's not that far of a jaunt. We don't want a localized brand anymore. That's not college football, because college football is a nationwide affair and we're going to have fans throughout the whole country.
Especially with players, NIL and online branding, and now that college football players can be celebrities, international celebrities in theory, if they have a great YouTube channel or a TikTok or whatever it is. And so the potential there is so interesting. And like you said, national brands and access to across the country is just crazy. And for me, though, that starts with building the talent pool from the areas that now we are the access point to the Big Ten. It gets me really excited for the potential of Nebraska recruiting actually in the South, and the potential that especially Matt Rhule has to capitalize on that in the long term. So, for you, like when it comes to the scheduling in the future, I am where are you at with like the strength? This is obviously going to make the conference more difficult. This is going to make Nebraska's path to winning more games in the regular season.
Everybody's equally as difficult, right?
Fair.
It's going to be a challenge for everybody, and I still think that we're poised again with the dedication, us being a very profitable program, a committed program to winning on all of the fronts. Again, it's not delusion when we know that we have the path for success and again, the drive to do it. Northwestern isn't putting their money where their mouth is in the same degree that Nebraska football is at all times, or Rutgers or Maryland. We're up there in spending because we believe that we can still do this.
And we make money.
Exactly. And we still make money. And so having both of those things for Nebraska, I still think there's still room. And again, like you look at success of like Iowa. I mean, have you guys been to Iowa's campus? It is so much more of a barren wasteland than Nebraska. There is much less to do. It is so boring. You're even further away from anything fun. And everything, I mean, it's just hell on earth in Iowa, and they can win football games. So, when you compare it to them, like, there's plenty.
And that's the argument. At the end of the day, Nebraska has bigger problems than recruiting. I mean, at the end of the day, it's been talent development been the problem for the last 6 years.
And that's the hope. And again, as we move, I think that makes it easier too, because as this moves more business wise and business sense, again, it'll be a lot more pragmatic, because again, when you're in one of these two super conferences, any one of these coaches, it's going to be harder to get these jobs. These jobs are going to be more sought after. And again, I do think that it does give a bump to everybody in the conference and also in the SEC. But I also think that, I mean, that's only just a good thing, that to have this competition raise. And I think that, this is only good for our university.
Yeah. And it feels weird. And like, I don't know exactly how I feel about it yet.
I don't know
it's gonna
either.
be interesting to see how it plays out. And like I said, I mean, at this point, who knows what's going to happen with the other sports? I mean, like, they could end up not being in the same conference. They could be in different conferences. It could just completely change. Football could isolate itself, or maybe basketball and football could isolate themselves. Who knows?
Yeah.
And so those are all up in the air at this point, and that's why there's so much to talk about. And the alignment in itself is interesting, and there's so much there. So we'll definitely be talking more about this in the future, and
it's going to keep coming up for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, we have a lot more videos coming too. Predictions, Big Ten West predictions, the final Big Ten West predictions after this, and a lot more. So be on the lookout for that. And we're having a channel rebrand happening. So make sure to, if you ever see some random video pop up on your stage, we're like, who are these guys? It might be us. So be on the lookout for that. And we will officially announce it here soon as well. So just know it's coming, and just making sure you guys are aware of that. So thank you guys for watching. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports, and we will see you next time.
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red, baby.